Hey, so glad you're with us for a special Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. This is one of those rare days where both Jim and I are away, so we decide ahead of time, hey, let's talk about something special that day. And today we're going to be talking about our favorite, least favorite, and craziest election nights and election cycles in honor of the results on Tuesday. We talked about the results yesterday, but we'll also both be out tomorrow. We'll be talking about some more stories that slipped through the cracks. Could have been martinis, but other bigger stories kind of pushed them off the top of the bar. So get ready for that tomorrow. But today we're going to be talking about our favorite, least favorite, and craziest election cycles. And Jim, it seems like pretty much for the most part of this century they've been crazy, and we'll get to all of it in a moment. But you and I have, in digging through this, have been through quite a few election cycles. That's the first thing that stands out.
Yeah. It's kind of, it used to be like a time like, there's like 2, 3, 4 big. It's like no, I come back to where we're now. It'll be interesting to see where our choices align. I suspect the chances for overlap are pretty good, particularly our perception of good, perception of bad, and the craziest. Like I think most people already tell what the craziest one is going to be already. But let's go through this and see how they go, Greg.
Yeah, exactly. The good news is there are multiple good election cycles for conservatives, multiple bad election cycles, and a whole lot of crazy, especially lately. So anyway, let's talk about our first great sponsor of the day, and that is Mizzen and Main. Mizzen and Main sent me, 5, 6 shirts and a couple of great pair of pants a while back. All of them fit fantastic. They're light. They're terrific material, whether they're for more of a fall look or a winter look or a golf shirt. There was a wide variety of styles, but fantastic craftsmanship, and really they all look great no matter which one I'm wearing. And so most dress clothes are uncomfortable, they're high maintenance, they can get expensive if you always have to take them to the dry cleaners. That doesn't happen at Mizzen and Main. You don't have to iron, and you don't have to take them to the cleaners.
Mizzen and Main's shirts and pants look refined, but they're stretchy, lightweight, moisture-wicking, wrinkle-resistant, and completely machine washable. No ironing or dry cleaning, which is an enormous time saver. When you put their clothes on, you'll feel the difference instantly. It's professional style that's actually comfortable, whether you're in the office, on the road, or even out on the golf course. It's timeless style. No paisley, that you can invest in once and enjoy for many years. It's why thousands of guys swear by Mizzen and Main when they want to look great without all the hassle.
Right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com, promo code 3ML20. That's Mizzen, spelled M-I-Z-Z-E-N, and Main, M-A-I-N.com. Promo code 3ML20 for 20% off. Mizzenandmain.com, promo code 3ML20. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main stores in select states. Well, Jim, as we've documented a few different times here during our 15 years on the podcast, there's very few feelings professionally like the morning after a good election night for conservatives and Republicans. But you and I are older than we probably like to admit, so we've seen quite a few. So there's a few to choose from. What's your favorite election cycle or election night that you can remember?
So a couple strong contenders here. Really tempted to go with either 2010 or 2014. 2014, I was down in Dallas for Glenn Beck's The Blaze, and they ended the show with a whole bunch of race. Like, the Republicans hadn't stopped winning. So I had to celebrate that one, portions of that one in my hotel room, live blogging and all that. But no. For the best, I went back to 2004. George W. Bush was not only the winner of that, down to the wire, there were a lot of people who believed John Kerry was going to win. I guess now that he's passed away, if you missed my piece, the Obi-Wan Kenobi, who I quoted in those days, was former Reagan chief speechwriter Tony Dolan, who was my mentor then and just a great guy. And he was, at that point, working for the Office of Secretary of Defense, but he was very plugged in with the Bush-Cheney campaign. And he just had this serene calmness that the American people were going to get this one right, that they understood the stakes of the election. This was a post-9/11 election. And he won. But the second thing that made this the best election night compared to all others, that was the night that I met my good friend Marshall Manson on the NRA news program of my other really good friend Cam Edwards. I'm right in the Kerry spot then. I think I'm a hot shot who really knows about elections. I've been covering the race pretty intensely. I got Obi-Wan. Marshall, who was at that point working at a individual rights and freedom organization, comes in with a 5-inch binder, and he just puts it down. And I was like, wait, I thought I'm the big guy. Who is this guy? Marshall, like, if he were any more detailed in his analysis, it would come down to, Edwin Shabatsky of Ohio is voting for Bush. He usually votes for Democrats. That's going to be on 22 Elm Street in Sheboygan, Michigan. That's going to be, like, it was just phenomenal. Like, I thought I was good at this stuff. Marshall, by the way, that was not necessarily Marshall's job. Marshall was just that much of a political geek. So, look, big Republican win. John Kerry goes down in flames. For his credit, John Kerry was very good for my career. So thank you, Senator. But just not just having a great night, but meeting a good friend who really knew politics backwards and forwards. Marshall has since gone on to become the CEO of several companies, and I'm here talking with you, Greg.
Hey. Yeah, but congratulations to Marshall. Yeah, there's a number of cycles that you could talk about. You could talk about very good Republican midterms in 2010 and 2014. I was in college in 1994 when the Republicans won both the House and the Senate. That was a big night. And we had Margaret Thatcher on campus that week, so that could not have been more exciting. The first election cycle I really remember, 1980. And so that's going to be my choice. It's fuzzy, so I had to look back at it originally. I remember I was got the weekly reader poll, and the only name I saw on the ballot that year was Carter. So I announced at dinner that I had voted for Carter. That was not a good thing to do, and so my older brother spent time patiently explaining why I should have voted for Ronald Reagan. And then the day before the election, our kindergarten teacher took us into the room in the school where the election would be taking place and said, okay, if you're for Reagan, you're for Carter, or for John Anderson, go to your various corners. And I made a beeline for Reagan. Really haven't turned back since. And so not only did Reagan win against Jimmy Carter and John Anderson, but Reagan wins 44 states out of 50, wins a majority of the vote as a challenger in a three-man race, 489 to 49 in the Electoral College against an incumbent president. But wait, there's more. The U.S. Senate elections that year, as just mentioned in the 1994 midterms, that's the first time the House went Republican since 1954. It's also the first time the Senate had gone Republican since the Eisenhower administration. The first time since rock and roll was born that the Senate had gone to the Republicans. They flipped 12 seats in that election, didn't lose a single one of them. And among those that they flipped, just listen to this lineup: Wisconsin, Washington, South Dakota, Alabama, Alaska. They beat Mike Gravel, thankfully. Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana. That's Dan Quayle. North Carolina, New Hampshire, and then a young 47-year-old whippersnapper in Iowa named Chuck Grassley. So... So, everybody walks around with the 84 Reagan Bush T-shirts, and that was a really fun election night on the Republican side, too, because you're just like, oh, we're going to get a clean sweep of the actual states here, and then Minnesota narrowly went for Mondale. But there weren't a lot of coattails in 84. The status quo pretty much reigned on the congressional side, and so 1980 was actually not only the Reagan Revolution for Reagan himself, but actually got the people in who could pass his tax cuts and some other things that were important in his agenda. So a little fuzzier, but I think that's still my favorite.
I was going to say, Greg, thank you for that delightful, happy stroll down memory lane. I did happen to go across the coverage, like a kind of a supercut of the coverage of NBC and Tom Brokaw announcing the winner of every race in 1984. And for those who remember, that was the year that Walter Mondale got stomped like a narc at a biker rally, as Dennis Miller would put it. And so he just goes through, and once again, but it's a fun little fact. The Republicans, as the incumbent party, were blue on the map, and Republicans were red. Another one, we're coloring blue for Ronald Reagan. Another one for Ronald Reagan. They cut through it. And by the end of the night, he's like, lo and behold, Ronald Reagan, big surprise. There's not a lot of drama in a year when one candidate wins 49 out of 50.
Yes, exactly. And the 50th was really, really close, too. Yeah, I liked the map better when it was that way because the Democrats were much more of the commie sympathizers, and now they're flat-out commies, so they should be the red ones.
Over in Britain, the Conservative Party is blue, and I would gladly make that trade. I don't think red really fits us as well as people think it does. So.
Nah, the left is the reds. We're the true blue party, man. Come on. Wow, a lot of fun. So we'll get to the not so fun stuff in
All right.
just a second because there were some bad election nights too. But let's talk about something every business owner knows way too well: missed calls. Because a missed business call is like watching money just fly out the window potentially and straight into your competitor's hands. Gosh, that feels terrible. And that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, formerly OpenPhone, which is the smarter way to run your business communications.
Quo is the #1 business phone system built for 2025, not 1995. Rated the top choice for customer satisfaction with more than 3,000 reviews on G2. So you don't have to worry about juggling phones or using a landline anymore. Quo works right from an app on your phone or computer. Your whole team can share one number and collaborate on calls and texts like a shared inbox, so you get faster responses and happier customers.
Quo is now offering 3 Martini Lunch listeners 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/3ML. That's QUO.com/3ML. You can even keep your existing number for free. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Well, Jim, the flip side, of course, of the euphoria of a good election night for the right is a bad election night for the right. And unfortunately, we've had more than our share of those as well. But which one's the worst?
You know, thinking back to recent defeats for Republicans, I wasn't surprised by 2020, which ironically came not on election night, but, numerous nights before, numerous days later. And at Obama, I feel like the handwriting had been on the wall for a while. So when it was made official, I think I was in the NRA news studio. It didn't feel that big. No, the worst one. I was surprised how quick and easy it was to pick this one. 2012. As alluded to earlier, I'd always wanted to be the Michael Barone on these election nights, to be on some sort of network or presentation, to be the guy looking at the early vote, doing the math, calculating, and being able to say, if not working at a decision desk, then being able to say, well, this looks really good for this candidate and this guy. So 2012, the Blaze calls, and they say, hey, could you come in and do that stuff? Like, yes, I'd love to do it. And also it's funny. Like, I look back, I remember thinking Romney really had a good shot, and people look at it as if it was a fait accompli and all that stuff, but did well in the debates. And then remember, like, Superstorm Sandy hit, and Chris Christie hugged Obama. So it comes down. And it becomes very clear that not only is Romney not going to win, the map's going to be basically the same. I think North Carolina and Indiana flipped, and beyond that, every other state shook out the same way. The listeners may recall Amy Holmes, the delightful, who's every bit as delightful and charming a person. We finished taping for the Blaze. It was very clear. The topic quickly went from, is Romney going to win, to where do Republicans go from here? Because, as you know, Republicans were never going to win an election ever again.
Right.
And we just cleaned out our mini bars, and it was just this. After I think we went to bed at like 4 or 5 a.m. and I had a flight the next day to go back. It was just like drowning our sorrows and knowing that second-term Obama was going to be a lot worse than first-term Obama, and he was. It was one of those things. Like, I was glad I was not hanging out. Like, if you're going to be through a miserable election cycle, being with like-minded people helps. And that's the only happy memory I have of an otherwise deeply disappointing election cycle.
Yeah. No, the ones where you kind of already know you're going to lose are somehow less painful. It's like your favorite team losing by 30 instead of on a last-second field goal. Yeah. So, 90
was over at halftime. Yeah.
Yeah, 92, you knew it wasn't going to go well. You knew Bob Dole was going to lose. You knew John McCain was going to lose. And so Mitt Romney's the one who really, had a chance. And so 2020 was just kind of a weird election in so many different ways. It was COVID. It was, Biden's dementia basically kicking in on stage at various times. But of course, nobody acknowledged that in the mainstream media at the time. But I think 2012 is the one. There are also some disappointing midterm elections along the way. 2022 did not go nearly as well as a lot of people thought. We didn't take back the Senate. We did get the House back, but barely. And so I think 2012 is the one where we thought we were going to get rid of Obama, and that would have been really nice. And then you just got to that point where Virginia and Florida and New Hampshire and Ohio, and somebody said, if you look at the margins and add it all up, it's less than 500,000 votes or whatever. And you just, well, we didn't get them.
That's nice.
Can that get me a cup of coffee at Starbucks? No, Yes, exactly. And but you know what? That night and that campaign is why we're where we are. Because
Yeah.
once the Democrats decided that Mitt Romney gave people cancer and was a dog abuser and binders full of women and all that stuff, Republican voters, or a lot of them, just said, you know what? We can throw the nicest guy on the planet up there, and they're going to demonize him and trash him all the way. So we might as well put up the biggest fighter who's willing to get in the mud and slug it out. And I'm not going to say that's entirely why we got Donald Trump now as the Republican nominee in 3 straight cycles, but it's a big part of it.
It is that once it became clear that any Republican nominee was going to be treated by both the Democrats and the mainstream media. Remember Candy Crowley correcting, Candy Bear Claw Crowley was going to correcting Romney during the campaign, during the debate there. Like, if every Republican nominee is going to get treated like the devil, well, then you might as well nominate the devil, or at least somebody who fights like the devil and who's been through everything, Rosie O'Donnell, like every conceivable best sex I ever had on the front page of the New York Post. There's no negative headline about Donald Trump that's going to scare him or intimidate him or bother him or something like that. So, Dan McLaughlin had a very good essay about how you look at the intense partisan divisions and the seeming craziness of the Trump era. It all got triggered by what happened in 2012.
Yeah, exactly right. And, Trump's a bit of a roller coaster. There are a lot of policies I love, whether it's cultural, with the sports and the bathrooms and all that. The border, he's done a fabulous job on the border. And then there are things like tariffs and other things I don't think he's doing the right thing on. And so, but definitely getting some wins, and including on some issues we hadn't gotten wins on in a very long time. So anyway, 2012. Yeah, that's probably the main presidential election where Republicans thought they had a decent chance in modern times and didn't get there.
Greg, not every election makes you want to clean out the liquor cabinet in your hotel room or in the minibar. But
if you do, there's dose, because your liver's going to need some help after that. More than 30% of Americans have a sluggish liver, a problem that often goes undetected until sometimes it's too late, unfortunately. Dose, though, is on a mission to educate all of us on why it's so important to maintain your liver health, and Dose has created an incredible product to help you do just that. Dose for Your Liver was formulated to cleanse your liver of unwanted elements, aid digestion, and maintain your body's filter.
Folks, your liver is not just your last line of defense on really bad election nights. It also stores vitamins and minerals. It regulates your cholesterol. It impacts your digestive and metabolic health. And it could even affect your energy level. In a double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial, Dose for Your Liver lowered liver enzyme levels by 50% in more than 86% of participants.
Yeah, so support your health with Dose Daily, which also tastes great, by the way. Save 25% on your first month when you subscribe at dosedaily.co/3ml or enter the code 3ml at checkout. Please note the 25% discount applies only to subscription orders, not one-time purchases. You can cancel anytime, no hassle. That's dosedaily.co/3ml to get 25% off your first monthly subscription with the code 3ml. Jim, I was just thinking that since the year 2000, including the year 2000, there's only been 2 presidential election nights where we actually had the winner declared on election night. Well, or at least the Democrats didn't concede until the next day or even slightly beyond. But over time, there have definitely been a number of crazy election cycles. I think one obviously stands out, but what's your number one?
Well, I'm gonna go not with the choice I suspect everyone is expecting me. Look, I'll leave it to you if you want to discuss 2016. I think 2024. If you're looking at the numbers, a Trump victory wasn't maybe surprising. I think the fact that he went 7-0 in the swing states was surprising. Winning the popular vote, that might be surprising. But in the end, if you were like Kamala Harris and utterly flabbergasted by Trump's victory, it's a sign you probably weren't paying close enough attention. I'm going to go with 2000 because I'm thinking back to that year. I was working for a .com. The troubles in the .com economy had just started to shake in there in November 2000. I was then in charge of policy.com and intellectualcapital.com, and we were going to put something up on election night. And I'm working there late. I am the lone, at that point I was the lone conservative in the office, the only person rooting for Bush. And everybody was convinced not just that Gore was going to win by a wide margin. I had gone in feeling really good, and then people remember the Bush DUI happens, and Karl Rove said years later that probably took anywhere from 1% to 4% off Bush's victory in any given state. So this election turned out to be much closer than expected. But if you remember, this is the year that they announced Gore had won Florida while the Panhandle polls were still open. Absolutely unforgivable by the networks. Like, buy a map, guys. Look at the time zones. This is not some obscure knowledge or something. But they originally called Florida for Gore, flip it back neutral, then it goes for Bush, and then around 2 a.m. the networks announce George W. Bush will be elected the next president of the United States. Aha! Great. It's 2:30 in the morning. I'm exhausted. I'm still in downtown Washington. Type up, headline: George W. Bush elected next president of the United States. Put one paragraph thing on the website, and then I go home, and I'm to sleep probably at like 3:30 in the morning. I'm still living in D.C. then, but I still And somewhere early morning hours, my wife, and at that point we just gotten married. My wife's asleep. She's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "Bush won." She's like, My wife was not rooting for Bush back then. And I go to sleep. And then around 6 a.m., honey, they're saying the Bush didn't win. Wait, what? And I go up and I'm like, crap, there's wrong information on the website right now. And this was not the era of working from home where I could get access into there. So I'm like, I got to get into the office right now and change that headline because it's wrong. Run into the office, get in there, change it, and say, because And that was the year where was it William Daley came out on behalf of Gore and said,
"Yep,
our campaign continues."
Yep.
Now there were a lot of reasons to not like that, but among them, campaign was over. Everybody cast their ballots by then, right? Like the idea of, we've cast our ballots and now we continue campaigning for president. No, you don't. Voting's done. And obviously a lot of suspicions about elections, a lot of suspicions about vote counts, a lot of suspicions about are they reliable, hanging chads and the bug-eyed guy. Look, like a lot of bad stuff came out of that election cycle. So I mean, and the idea, it was like a month before they finished the recount. Supreme Court decision. There are still people who insist that Al Gore was the true winner. There's not the case. They did I remember Michael Moore's, I think it was Fahrenheit 9/11, but one of his documentaries, he said, he runs a headline, Miami Herald, recount proves Gore would have won election. And people look at that, if you're like, oh wait, it was a headline in a letter to the editor. And he made it look like it was a news. Like that, like Michael Moore is a big fat losing idiot who in a lot of ways, like stuff like that is why you should not, he's a propagandist. He's not a documentarian. But anyway, So those are my memories from 2000, which I think as high as the bar is set by 2016 and 2024, even 2020, I think the craziest is got to be the year 2000.
Oh, it has to be. It absolutely has to be because, you've got the hanging chads, which was fun. Then you had the butterfly ballot in Palm Beach County, which supposedly produced
Buchanan.
Jews for Buchanan. Were they voting for him? Were they trying to vote for Al Gore? It doesn't matter. They voted for Pat Buchanan. Then you had the Brooks Brothers riot as they did the recounts in Miami-Dade. And one of the big mistakes, there were really two, that the Gore campaign made here was wanting to do hand recounts in only 4 counties that were at the time deep blue: Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, and Volusia. And then for weeks on end, Al Gore was out there. This is America. In America, we count the votes. And so the Florida Supreme Court, which leaned heavily left at that time, if that's possible to believe at this point, kept siding with Gore. The U.S. Supreme Court, as much as it got involved, generally sided with Bush. And eventually, there were different standards for counting votes in different counties and what counted with all these punch cards and so forth. And finally, the Supreme Court just said, no, there's got to be a single standard. You have till then to do it, which they didn't have enough time. And Bush basically was declared the winner there. So just amazing. There were obviously crazy moments in other campaigns. 2016 was also the year of Brexit and the year that the Cubs got off the schneid and won the World Series. And my boss at Radio America is like, it's a crazy year, man. Every poll was showing Hillary. All the projections were like, 90-some% chance to win. We're doing election night coverage.
New York Times dial, right? And by the end of the night, everybody who reads the New York Times was putting the needle from the dial into their vein because they just...
Yes, exactly. And so my boss texts me at like 2:30 and just says, Cubs win. And so he says that. And, you and I do the best and worst political theater in our year-end awards. The meltdown at the Javits Center that year when they just walked in assuming it was going to be a walk in the park, and then they lost to Trump. It's still just an epic moment for the collapse of the Hillary campaign.
For listeners, if you think we did this entire exercise today just so Greg could do an Al Gore impression, stay tuned for later this week when we will have Andrew Cuomo debating Al Gore, and Greg will do all the voices. Then after that, I'll do Donald Trump versus Ted Cruz.
Yes. The fun part of this is I don't think Jim and I did hardly any outside prep. We just remember this stuff so well. I looked up the 1980 Senate elections to see how many seats we got flipped. But other than that, this is just what we love. It's just
all
so much
of
fun
these
to talk
moments
about.
are just tattooed on our brains. There's
Yes. Amazing. So, Jim, tomorrow we'll take a look at some more stories that slipped through the cracks. But until then, have a great day.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Columbus of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Columbus. Have a great Thursday. Join us again Friday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.